Hello, and welcome to another edition of Character Corner. Today we are talking about one of the newer series in Super Smash Bros. Definitely the last character added onto the roster. A proper third party, and one that's somewhat relevant right now with a brand new game, well, brand new I say in quotation marks, game released just on the Switch, and that is, of course, the Bayonetta series. Joining me today is Source Gaming staff member Triss.
Hello.
And yeah, let's just jump right into this. And before we talk about any characters, I just want to go over Triss. What do you think the chances are of another Bayonetta character making it into Smash?
So I feel like that mostly depends on if Bayonetta herself even comes back, and I feel like considering she won the ballot, I think aside from Sonic, the other Sega rep, I feel like Bayonetta's kind of I feel like she'd be a lock-in as long as Kamiya's fine with it.
No, I definitely understand that. I do wonder if, though, like how Snake was removed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the big reasons for that is because he doesn't really fit much in Smash.
Mm-hmm.
And Bayonetta's kind of the same. I mean, they did make it like shorter and I guess quote unquote more cartoony to fit into Smash. But I think actually, I'm not sure. I was going to say that it's because Bayonetta is obviously the outlier of the third parties.
Yeah.
She got into the ballot, but she's also like the least relevant, well, not relevant, but the least famous, least historically significant third-party character on the list.
Well, she's officially famous to the Smash community with all her controversy.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But then again, she is relevant, and Nintendo has been publishing her games ever since 2 onwards. And so that's definitely worth something, because even though characters are a bit different, Nintendo published third-party games often get mentioned in Smash at least in musical trophies, and along those lines. That's what happened with Cold Sept, and that's what happened with Rayman Legends. So I don't see why, even if Bayonetta, I guess, as a character goes, they can still bring in elements from that series. Yeah, it's just weird. I would have said she's not the, next in line third-party character to go. I think that's Cloud.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a matter of, does her popularity as the ballot winner outlie everything else about her? Oh well, I guess we'll just have to see. I mean, I'm of the opinion that the next Smash will be an enhanced port and won't have any cuts, so I think Bayonetta is a safe lock for that. And you're right, I don't think Kamiya would be against her coming back at all, so I think as long as he's okay with it, then as long as Sakurai wants it, it's fine. But enough of that, let's jump into the characters. And I think we'll start with the most obvious kind of pick, but also the one that probably adds the least amount of uniqueness to the roster, and that's Jean. Or Jean? How do you Jean?
Yeah.
So Jean is Bayonetta's rival, but also like best friend. Like she's the only other Umbra witch left. And the thing about Jean is, in the first game, she's basically brought in as a rival to Bayonetta, and then she's playable for a bit, and she's then her friend in the second game and a big part of the story. Bayonetta's trying to rescue her. But the thing about Jean is, being another Umbra witch, she basically plays exactly the same as Bayonetta does.
Especially since, I mean, we already have in Smash the Jean alt for Bayonetta, which gives her the entire palette and also changes the Wicked Weaves to look like Jean's. So
Right, yeah.
we kind of already have her, just not as a model.
Yeah. Like, it's a weird situation, right? Because Jean, as a character, is popular, and she's definitely one of the most important Bayonetta characters. Arguably the second most important after Bayonetta herself.
Yeah.
But she is too similar. It's kind of like Chrom, right? Because Chrom from Fire Emblem, he's the main character, he's really popular, fans liked him, but he was too similar to Marth and Ike that it felt kind of redundant adding him in. And I don't know if Sakurai is willing to do clones of third-party characters. Like, I don't know if that's a sign of favoritism if suddenly Bayonetta gets a second character, even if it's a clone. And it might bring up the questions of, why don't you have Miss Pac-Man? Why don't you have Zack? Why don't you have Ken?
So I actually feel like what they could do for Jean is do an Olimar and Alf kind of situation. Because they already kind of have the palette for her in Bayonetta. It's just a matter of actually making her a separate character with a nameplate, but still part of Bayonetta. Because I think that'd be the good kind of fan service without making people complain about it.
Well, again though, I wonder about that, because then wouldn't people bring up, well, why can't you do the same for like Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man?
It is true.
Because they're both identical, except one's a woman. And Pac-Man's ults are a bit lackluster as it is, so I'm sure people would be craving for that. And Bayonetta already has a different ult, because you can choose between her Bayonetta 1 and 2 appearances.
At the same time, though, she still only has, I think, 8 costumes, where Little Mac is still the character with 16 costumes.
That's true, but he's also the only character with 16 costumes. He's the super special one.
Which was Wario in the previous game.
Yeah. So I feel like that's... I don't know what really goes into deciding them. I mean, it made sense in Brawl because Wario was the only one with a special outfit, but that's obviously not the case in Smash 4.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Little Mac kind of got that favoritism. Maybe he was the first one they decided to get a special outfit, and it just kind of is a leftover from that. But I could speculate about that for days. It's not why we're here. So I can't think of any other way to kind of make Jean unique.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the next character, and this is probably the one that tops most people's lists when they're thinking of other Bayonetta characters. He's a presence in both games and an ally of Bayonetta. He's also like a secret boss, I think, in both games, and playable in the multiplayer mode on Bayonetta 2, and that's Rodin.
Yes.
So Rodin's role in the game is mostly as the shopkeeper. He makes all the weapons and upgrades for Bayonetta, but he's also kind of like the devil, I think. He's like implied to be one of the most powerful demons ever.
I think his lore is that he's a fallen angel demon. So
yeah. So basically Lucifer, but with cool tattoos all over him. But yeah, Rodin's like this big heavyweight. I think he uses a hammer in his attacks. I can't actually remember.
I know he has a lot of like magic abilities, and because he makes all the weapons, I can easily see him having like the slow movement like Ganondorf, but like a versatile amount of weapons where he just like references to all the different kind of weapons he can make for Bayonetta to use, like the swords, the strange chain chomp thing, the like a whole bunch of different things like that, like even like the chainsaw things. Like just having him be able to use all of those would be rather interesting. But he would probably become the slowest character in the game.
Yeah, no. I was thinking of Ganondorf when it was first brought up to that, and you're right, Bayonetta only really uses her guns as her only weapon. So having a character that could bring in the other weapons would be a cool idea, and I think that'd be a cool thing for him to do. He would have to be slow though. Like yeah, Ganondorf is the first one in mind, mainly because he has the same kind of body frame as Ganondorf does.
Yeah.
And he has this big, empowering sort of presence about him. And so I think it kind of has to work in that way if he got it. So, alright, that's Rodin. So the next character that we had on our list to discuss is a recurring villain, I guess, in the Bayonetta series. He was, well, spoiler alert, he was the main villain kind of in the first game. And then in the second game he was a rival throughout, then somewhat turned good guy. And many of him know him as the Lumen Sage, but his actual name is Boulder.
Yes.
And he is Bayonetta's dad.
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated. But he has some of the coolest fights in the game, and you constantly fight him in Bayonetta 2.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of his story, right? That's the thing you find out through Bayonetta 2. It explains his presence in the first game and how he ended up the way he did, and it follows them all completely. And it's really cool. I think he has some of the cooler moments in that game, and he also has a really unique weapon for Smash, and that's being the big like halberd lance.
Yes. So I think it'd actually be really interesting because what I loved about his fight is that they kind of showed I guess the angels technically have their own version of the Wicked Weaves, like what Bayonetta has with the Madama Butterfly. So so he could technically still have some of the same attacks that Bayonetta works into her Smash attacks, but he'd be very different because I think even though he has this spear lance thing, I don't really know what to call it exactly.
It's like a double-edged lance.
Yeah, like you can tell he'd have some similarities to Bayonetta with like the magical abilities, but he definitely wouldn't have like the range with the guns. He'd be a lot more of a reach out poking, probably like Marth with like the tippers. But I think he'd actually be really interesting as a playable character in Smash.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it'd be great. Like much more close. He'd be a lot far. Well, is that a good thing? Bayonetta is already pretty fast, but Boulder is all about speed and rushing his opponents and stuff.
I think if he didn't have much attack power, that'd be fine. So if he didn't deal much damage but he was fast, I think that'd make up for it.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of precedence for Boulder, more than any other character in my opinion. Because he's kind of, he took Jean's place as the rival character in the second Bayonetta game. But he's more unique, so that already adds something. And he's also kind of something that hasn't been done in Smash yet. He has enough moves that he could easily work. In fact, he was planned to be playable originally in Bayonetta 2.
He's in the multiplayer mode, I believe.
Oh, is he in the multiplayer mode as well? Okay. So it's like Boulder is probably the most unique... Well, I don't think he's the most unique character out of all of them, because I think the next one we're going to talk about is probably the most unique in terms of like how he might fight. But I think Boulder is probably the most likely.
I really agree there, actually, because I think Boulder's probably the best pick to represent the other side of Bayonetta.
Yeah, he represents the... Yeah, that's actually something I didn't even think about. He represents the angels, doesn't he?
Yep.
And a whole part of Bayonetta is the witches versus the angels.
Yeah, exactly.
So having one from each side would be a really good idea. So let's move on to the fourth character.
Okay.
And the fourth character is another character who was introduced in... Well, actually, all these characters have been in the first two games, but properly, this one was introduced in Bayonetta 2. Which also makes him uniquely owned by Nintendo. Because Nintendo owns all the story stuff in Bayonetta 2 and all the content stuff like Bayonetta's Look. And so they own this character as well. It's everyone's favourite card jeweler, Yugimoto. No. It's Loki. The young boy who runs around with Bayonetta in the second game is a big part of the story. He's got amnesia, but as it goes on, I don't want to spoil the story, but he has a much bigger presence and much more relevance to the overall lore of the series. And he also fights with cards, so the Yugimoto reference was very apt.
It worked.
But Loki's an interesting one. Loki's one I've always kind of vouched for being an assist trophy.
Yes.
If the Bayonetta was to have any assist trophies, I think Loki would be the best one for it. Mainly because I don't think he quite fits a playable status, at least before the likes of Boulder and Rodin. But he can do unique and cool magic with his cards, which also act as projectile weapons in of themselves. And he looks unique, and I think he would fit quite well into Smash. So there's like a lot going for Loki, but I just think he's just a little bit below the others in terms of playable status.
I think that's mostly because it's hard to pinpoint exactly what he would do. Because while he does have a moment in Bayonetta 2 where you do play as him, kind of, it's mostly just running in that case. He kind of has the cards to fight with, but he doesn't really do much with them.
So it would require... Not that, I mean, Sakurai has done more with characters who have less. So it's not like it's entirely completely a point against him. But I just think his overall importance only really... Because the way the story went, I mean, Boulder might never come back, or maybe he will, depending on how the plot story goes. But Rodin will always come back, and Jean will always come back. But Loki, he might not leave Bayonetta 2.
Yeah, I agree there.
Considering how the story kind of wraps up, and his presence, and it's kind of done, there's no real reason for him to come back in any way. So, unless it's just for fan service or a cameo, but I guess it depends on how Bayonetta's 3 story goes and all. I mean, heck, Bayonetta might not even be in it if we have the trailer to go by, so we'll have to just wait and see on that.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this why don't we go over some characters, just one each, that probably don't have any kind of chance of getting in, but we thought we'd mention anyway. And why don't you start?
I want to mention Luca, because Luca's a great comic relief character who is kind of like a partner to Bayonetta, where like he tries to actually help out and kind of stalks her, to be completely honest. But he's not he's not Enzo, where he's just kind of there for the beginning of each story. He's there. He has like that weird grappling hook thing in Bayonetta 2. I feel like I can't see him being playable, especially since he has no real combat skills. But like, I think he'd make for a fun assist trophy where he just kind of distracts you by this constantly swinging around in front of the screen, maybe holding a rose.
No, I like Luca. I'd love to see Luca in Smash in some form, but yeah, he doesn't really have anything unless you made a moveset out of a grappling hook. And isn't he a photographer or something, or a journalist?
Yeah,
isn't that why
he's like a freelance journalist?
Yeah, that's his original excuse for stalking Bayonetta and stuff. But he always ends up being like playing some kind of major role in the games. Even Bayonetta 2, which to be honest, he's barely in.
Yeah.
He still ends up playing quite a key role towards the end of it. So that's so Luca's always he's probably a character who'll always show up in all the games.
Yeah.
So I think my choice was going to be one of the two actual main villains. I mean, I already mentioned that Boulder is the main villain of Bayonetta 1, but he's a very different character in that game.
Correct.
And I mentioned both of the villains together because of the main villain of Bayonetta 1 and the main villain of Bayonetta 2 have a connection.
Yes.
Boulder, their stories are interlinked. And so they both, I guess, kind of play the same, even though they look different.
Yeah.
So you could go with either of them. That's why I'm going to throw them both out here. Actually, also, I just straight up forgot the name of the main villain of Bayonetta 2.
It was Loptor or something like that? Lopter?
I know it's a bit weird. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Loki's sort of opposite or whatever. But he's like... I think both of them have moveset potential, and they're obviously both villains. They're just the only problem with either of them is that they kind of don't appear until the very end of the game.
Yeah.
So they're not that relevant, and Sakurai likes to think of characters that people would instantly recognize as being a part of that series. Where, like, you know, you can play it from the beginning and that character is there from the beginning, and so even people who never managed to beat the game but just played it for a little bit can still recognize that character. Yeah. It's kind of like why I think he has a thing for player 2 characters rather than main villains instead.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why Boulder and Rodin have like two of the biggest chances out of everyone we named.
Yeah.
Because of that instant recognition. Yes, Jean too, but because of the clone status there. Like,
yeah,
I think they would opt for the more uniqueness of the other two. I do feel like with the final bosses, does Sakurai kind of... I feel like Smash tries to avoid, like, endgame spoilers a lot. Not entirely, to be honest, but, like, in some ways it feels like they do.
It depends on what counts as a spoiler and what doesn't. Yeah. I mean, the big example I always go for is Xenoblade Chronicles.
Right.
The trophies in Smash 4 completely spoil.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the biggest plot twists in that game. Not all of them, but one of the major plot twists in that game that happens about halfway through is just straight up spoiled by Smash, and it's not even hidden. The trophy that spoils it appears in Smash Tour.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you even play Smash Tour, you'll get spoiled for Xenoblade Chronicles. Oh, and I'm sure if I really read through all the trophies again, I can find spoilers for other games as well.
Oh yeah, probably.
They probably do, but again, it depends. I guess it depends on the context. Like, if you just showed the main villain, and you had a descriptor of him and then that was it, you probably wouldn't realize he's the main villain. You don't need to talk about any sort of connection he has to any other characters or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell he's a villain, because he just looks like one. But there's no implication that he is, like, the big bad or that there's any kind of major twist towards it. So I think they wouldn't mind that.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But, hey, maybe we'll get trophies then. Maybe they'll add more Bayonetta trophies in the next game.
That would be nice.
I agree. So I think, we're going to wrap this up here. So I think there's not really anything else to talk about with Bayonetta. So let us know who in the comments let us know which Bayonetta characters you want to see in the next Smash, if any. To be honest, I'm imagining most people are going to be like, no, but just humour me and pretend that you do. But if you've never played Bayonetta and you are interested in playing it, then grab the Bayonetta 1+2 pack that just came out on Switch. It'll literally come out probably the same day this video does, if not just a few days before, because Bayonetta is a fantastic game that really didn't do as well as it should on the Wii U,
Exactly.
and I blame the Wii U for that. But the Switch is proving itself to be a time for games that underperform to make a big comeback, and we should. I think it's worth proving that Bayonetta deserves that comeback, especially if you'll get everyone ready for Bayonetta 3, which we know is coming anyway. And you're going to get 2 games for the price of 1. I mean, this is a pretty good deal, but enough for promoting something that I don't even own. Look on the screen right now, you'll see the next 2 series we have lined up. So just click on, well, not click, but let me know in the comments which one of these 2 you want to see. And if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Sorry for all this mindless rambling, but always remember that you should return to the source.